Hello and welcome everyone to today's workshop on PhD applications for STEM, which is basically the sciences. Before we begin the presentation, I just want to give some housekeeping rules. As most of our public workshops are, this is also a recorded session. And so if you are when we move to the Q&A part, if you are comfortable being in the recording of the session, then you can raise your hand and ask your questions and put your videos on, but otherwise you feel free to put them in chat. Please keep yourselves on mute while the presentation is going on, but and only unmute when you raise your hand and you're called upon to do so. Yeah, I think that's about it. So just a little outline on what we're going to be doing today. So I'm just going to start by introducing Project EduAccess and introducing you to today's panelists, and then we move on to discussing PhD applications for the STEM field in different countries. So we'll begin with Taiwan, then we'll talk about Europe. We have two panelists from there, so one will speak about Italy, one about Germany. Then we talk about PhD applications in the UK and in the US, and then we move on to a Q&A session. For those of you who are joining us for the first time or are not sure about what Project EduAccess is, we're basically a network of students or an organization that believes in making making higher education leadership and professional opportunities more accessible to learners from marginalized communities. We recognize that people from marginalized communities are denied these more systematically and structurally, and we're trying to sort of try to bridge those gaps that exist in accessing them. We do this by providing mentorship, engaging in advocacy, and also doing all of these capacity building workshops in person and online. So about your wonderful panelists today who've taken the time out to join us very early in the morning for many of them. We have with us Arish, who's doing a PhD in Translational Neuroscience in the University of Edinburgh. We have Tatheer, who's doing a PhD in social networking and human-centered computing in Taiwan. Then we have Zulkarnain, who's doing a PhD in mechanical metamaterials in Italy. And then we have Rachana, who has already pursued her PhD in material science from Germany. And so all of these panelists will speak to you about their experience and what the application process is like in their countries and why they chose to study in that country and not in other places. So I'm going to hand it over to Tatheer to start with Taiwan. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Tatheer Hussain, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD from National Kaohsiung University of Science and Technology. But before that, to make this session more connected with you, I want to share you a small story about a new innovative hardware device. This is dual chamber piezoelectric microblower for heat dissipation. Those who are in electronics and communication, they might know about this device. Why? This is the original image of the device that has been developed in a lab in Taiwan. It's thinner, simpler design, cheaper. Though the previous designs that are already existing in the market are much are not as good as this device, and it's also cheaper than others that are already in market right now. Practical applications for this device are like mobile phones we use in our mobile phones, and VR sets, and also battery packaging in electric cars. So this is one of the projects that is currently ongoing in a lab in Taiwan. So why I'm sharing this hardware with you? Now, before that, now consider another scenario. You got selected in any Indian universities other than an IITM. How many of you anticipate being assigned this project in your master's or PhD or bachelor's? I guess very few. There might be scenarios like that, but only in IITs. But this project is a work of 2 students from Kashmir, India. Before this, student X and students, I will not name those students. There are 2 students, student X and student 1. Student X, who failed in the entrance exam, BTech from a private college, did not qualified GATE, unemployed for 2.5 years, preparing for SSB. And
Sorry,
student,
Tatheer. Sorry, do you want to share your screen? Because currently it's my PPT.
oh, I have already shared.
No, I think it's mine. Do you want to share yours now? Yeah, I think it was, yeah. Go ahead.
Let me share it again. Is it visible now?
Yes.
There are 2 students. I was talking about a project like dual chamber piezoelectric device that has been developed by 2 students from Kashmir who are currently working in Taiwan, actually working in a lab. Practical application is it is used in mobile phones and also in VR sets and also battery packaging in electric cars. So the reason I'm sharing this is student X who failed in entrance exam, did a BTech from private college, did not qualify GATE, unemployed for 2.5 years, preparing for SSB and other government exams. And student Y, who qualified entrance exam, BTech from a NIT, qualified GATE, unemployed for 2 years, preparing for government. Both were looking for a job. Then they both approached to some of the students in Taiwan, and they got, with their mentorship, they got selected in Taiwan. Now both these students are working in a device that will be in our mobile phones, maybe in VR sets and in electric cars after 3-4 years. Currently, this project is on a reliability test. Most of the time, people will tell you about, like we will tell you about why Taiwan, why this, there is this. So I thought it's better to share a practical application, practical example why 2 students from who were not getting a job in India did this job, and in after 2-4 years, this device will be in our mobile phone. So this is, so I would like to share your device. Please share your screen again. Can you share your screen? So we will talk about like more, every country has this kind of thing, academic excellence, technology have cost effective, but this was an example that is really connected to me personally because I was the mentor to those students. They are currently doing well in their studies, but how they reached there is mostly because of networking. Can you go to next slide? So the PhD in Taiwan is mostly research oriented. Supervisors prioritize the lab work. Their coursework is there, but it's not important for supervisors, advisors. They don't care about that. The only thing they care about is how you are going to do in your lab work. The PhD is typically from 3 to 5 years, and exception is Academia Sinica and 1, 2, 3 universities. The PhD there might go up to 6 years. Admission requirements is for PhDs, masters, but Academia Sinica also accept students who have recently completed their bachelor's in any Indian university. Fully funded. Apart from that, there are other opportunities like teacher assistantship, research assistantship opportunity during your PhD. Like I'm currently doing a PhD from National Kaohsiung Institute of Science and Technology, and at the same time, I'm also working as a national research assistant at National Health Research Institute, Taiwan. And when it comes to the language requirements in Taiwan, you don't need language requirements, but if you have, it's a plus to have. Please, next slide. There are many scholarships in Taiwan. You can go from from smaller scholarships to the bigger ones. But which I mostly recommend to students is Academia Sinica. This is one of the top most scholarships in India, where IITs from India are currently working, currently doing their research. Another one is MOFA scholarship, MOFA Taiwan scholarship, MOE Taiwan scholarship. There is also international higher education scholarship. But for you, if you are applying for PhD, then first three, Academia Sinica, MOFA Taiwan, and MOE Taiwan is best for you. I have also attached the links for each and every scholarship. You can, after this session, if they share the presentation with you, you can go directly to these links and also check their requirements and other things. For MOFA scholarships, you don't need to apply. When you apply to any, I will come to that. When you apply to the university, you will automatically be considered for this scholarship. For international higher education and higher Mandarin and scholarship are for those who are who want to go for language courses. So if you, it is another chance for like bachelor's and master's students who want to go to Taiwan. Next. The timeline, if there are three types of scholarships. Like first one is university, directly university. Another one is MOE, and TIG fellowship. And also the directly applying to university means you are applying to Ministry of Foreign Education, Ministry of Foreign Affairs scholarship. There are two sessions for MOFAT scholarship. That's one is for spring intake and another one is for fall's intake. Spring intake you will start between August and November. You have to apply between August and November. And fall intake starts from January and March. Apart from this, there's another scholarship, MOE Taiwan, MOE the Ministry of Education Taiwan scholarship. For I will also come to this, how you are going to apply to this university. And third one is TIGP fellowship, which I was mentioning earlier, Academia Sinica scholarship. This is one of the best scholarships in Taiwan. Approaching to supervisors is one of the other options that you can have, and you can apply. You can approach to any supervisor any time of the year. They will definitely accept you if they deem fit for their programs. Next, please. This is a link studyintaiwan.org. You can find any kind of information regarding PhD, master's, bachelor's scholarships in Taiwan. You need to find the, we can directly go to this website and do the rest of the thing is on your own. Next. In Taiwan, you don't need to search here and there. You can just go to the name the university and go to the international office page. OIA. There is a page in every website of university, like international office page or OIA simply, or admissions page. In admission page, there is a scholarship opportunities page where you can find about application processes, deadlines, and requirements. Next, please. For I think this is these big 4-2+ that help you tell your studies is for I think are every country, but in Taiwan I will give you some highlights. Which one are most important in these 6 tools? First of all, I have seen this. This is my personal experience. This is my 5th year in Taiwan. So based on my personal experience, the professors in Taiwan they only trust the letter of recommendations. Letter of recommendation is most important in Taiwan. Then second priority goes to research proposal. Other things like personal statements, statement of purpose, transcripts, and academics are not too important as compared to letter of recommendations and research proposal. If your letter of recommendation and research proposal is good, then I guarantee you like 99% time chances you have the chances to get into this PhD in any university in Taiwan. But there is one more thing that I want to highlight here is during your when you draft a CV, academic CV, most of the times you might have heard about like Europass. Why Europass is important? The university portals in Taiwan are mostly designed as per the Europass format. When you submit your CV in any university in Taiwan, the Europass system is going to automatically detect their like headlines, like percentage, like education, like work experience. If the system finds your CV eligible for the PhD in Taiwan, then that's going to be transferred to the OIA department. If this portal doesn't find your CV good enough, so it won't be transferred to the OIA department. So it's highly important you make your CV in Europa's format and follow the general titles that are already in Europa's format to make your work easier. Please next. I think it's done for me. You can go for Italy.
Yes, thank you so much, Tatheer. Zulkarnain, do you want to?
Thank you, Misbah. Thank you, Tatheer. So my name is Zulkarnain. I'm a PhD student in physics at University of Milan. So I will be talking a little bit about my PhD experience in Italy and like some tips in the end. So, okay. So here, PhD is mostly research oriented. Like most of your focus should go to your research work. There is little bit of coursework involved, but mostly it's, research work. And as like the theory said, duration is 3 to 4 years. In Europe, in some countries it's 3 years, but in it in some countries it's 4 years. In Italy, it's mostly I have seen 3 year like PhD programs. And talking about the admission requirements, as general, you need a master's degree or any equivalent education in related field. And regarding the funding, here are a lot of options. Like there are university scholarships for you. You apply in the university portal and you can apply for the scholarship. In addition to that, there are like Italian government scholarships, which are provided by Italian government. And there are also company funding. Sometimes there's a research that involves you to collaborate with company, and company can provide funding for your PhD. So in addition to this, there are some like other scholarships, external scholarship, but these are the main ones. And in Italy, you could also have teaching opportunities if your, master's degree courses are in English or maybe bachelor's, then you can teach at your department. But like sometimes the courses are in master's courses are in Italian, so that time like it's difficult for you to teach. But mostly like in some international universities, a lot of courses are in master's courses are in English language, so you could get good teaching opportunities. And the language of PhD is English, but if you know Italian, it's a plus point. I mean, to live here, you need to know a little bit of Italian, but speaking from like academic point of view, English like is more than enough. You can like everything in PhD is done in English. So for that, some universities require English language, some don't. But if you have some English language tests like IELTS, TOEFL, it will be a plus point, because that way you will have more options for like applying to different universities. And as usual, timeline here is mostly like September or October intake, but sometimes like it can differ. For example, in my case, I applied in November and I like got accepted in December and I came here in January. So it depends upon the scholarship funding, and also like it differs from university to university. But mostly I have seen people come during September or October intake. Misbah, can you change that slide, please? Yeah. So let me brief you about the application process. It's, general as you apply for a PhD in any other country. So first you need to, research a little bit. You need to check different programs in different universities, if they are inclined with your research interest. Mostly depends, like if you had done your master thesis or any project in masters, you are uh, you can apply go in that domain, because that way you can have a little bit of work experience which will help you in getting acceptance. So yeah, and after that, like just prepare the materials, transcript, CV, letter of recommendation. These are like important documents. SOP, statement of purpose, where you need to write your story, why, like why are you applying for this position, why they should select you, and like it's highly personalized. Like you can write whatever makes sense. And yeah, letter of recommendations. In addition to this, some universities may require like research proposals, but it also depends on the university. Like in my case, I didn't require, my university didn't require a research proposal. There was a project, it was already there, and I just applied for it, and I didn't have to submit the research proposal. So yeah, once you identified the universities or the groups you want to apply with, then you need to complete an online form. You just go to the university website, and there will be a call for application. Like here in Italy, we usually have like calls like 37th call, 38th, and then you can apply there, uh, like complete the form, submit your, like upload your documents, your like details. Then after that, like universities will evaluate your applications. And then some universities may require interviews where you will be shortlisted after evaluation, and you may have to like give an interview with the like professor or supervisor or some other like professor in the university. And then finally there will be, you will receive an admission decision, and then you can do the other things like enrollment and other stuff while you reach there. So mostly I think in yeah, let me tell a little bit about the interviews. So in interviews, they will usually ask you about your work. Like if you have done master's thesis, you'll have to explain that. Or if you have done some project in your master's, you'll have to explain that. So yeah, that thing is a bit important when you are applying for PhD position. So yeah, this was like application process overview. Can you see the slide? Yeah. Now approaching supervisor. As I said, first you need to research, you need to find your interest. If you see some, like there's some group whose research inclines with your interest, maybe you can, you know, just email the potential supervisor and talk to him. But it should be, I mean, it should be personal. Sorry, professional. In email, you need to mention about little bit about yourself. For example, I have completed my master's in this university in this like a field, and a little bit about like why you are applying to this group, what's your like research interest, what you want to work on. It should be, I mean, in a good professional way. Or maybe you can also ask for guidance. Suppose you have applied at some university and you got acceptance, then maybe you can ask here what happens like when you apply in university, then you need to choose like which topic you want to work on. Then maybe there you can apply, see the like supervisors and email them, I want to work with you on these topics and those things. Or you can also ask them for guidance, like they will guide you really well about that. If you don't know like what further steps you should follow, you can just ask them, I want to apply with you and I have got this like acceptance, and they can guide you like very well. Yeah, these were some tips. So yeah, why Europe, especially Italy? I mean, it depends on your priorities. Like some people prefer, you know, good work-life balance. For them, Europe is a good option. Some people may prefer, you know, for example, in US, the PhD is, you know, more lengthy, and you need to do a lot of coursework. But here in Europe, it's mostly, you know, research oriented. There is little bit of coursework involved, but it's mostly, if you want to directly work in lab, don't want to spend time on courses and other stuff, because in masters you have already done so, then Europe, especially Italy, is a good option for you. And here are like lot of research opportunities. You can, you know, work with other groups in different countries in European Union region. And the scholarships, you get scholarships and fundings, and tuition is affordable. In addition, you can learn new languages. These days, I'm trying to learn Italian, so you have a good you get a good opportunity to learn a new language. In addition to that, networking, you can travel to a lot of universities in European Union region, because you don't need a visa to travel to any other EU country. So that way, like, you can form a good network. And as I said, quality of life is it's work-life condition is balanced here. So if you want to have that, so you can choose Europe. In addition to that, like, traveling opportunities, I mean, you get to travel a lot if you are in European Union. So these are some reasons which I believe are important, that why should you apply in Europe. Yes, now it's Germany. I think it's the other speaker now. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much, Zulkarnain. Rachana, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Misbah, and thanks, Zulkarnain. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachana, and I completed my PhD in 2021 from Germany, and more specifically, one of the Max Planck Institutes. And I wanted to share with you the process, like at least my PhD journey and this aspect of research or PhD in Germany, because maybe it's not known to everyone or it's not the common route. So, of course, you have the university system where you can apply. I mean, you will be part of a university because only the universities are allowed to give you your official degree. But especially for STEM-based PhDs, and if you want to follow like a research track, this is an excellent option. So to consider the Max Planck Institute. So the Max Planck Institutes are basically, they were set up as publicly funded research institutes to do fundamental research. But now they have diversified. I mean, most of them still do very fundamental research. But so if that is something that you're considering, that then this is definitely a very good option for you. But even if not, it's still, they already also have a lot of diversified groups and interdisciplinary groups and so on and so forth. So my very unconventional PhD application route was that I did not go through the official application route. So I just wanted to share that. And that is definitely an option when it comes to the Max Planck Institutes. So the way it's set up is that because it's a research institute, they're not officially allowed to give you your degree. So they partner, every Max Planck Institute partners with a different university locally situated in the city. And they have something called IMPRS, which is International Max Planck Research School. And the IMPRS will coordinate your admission with the university and everything. But mostly you are employed as like a scientific worker in the Max Planck Institute. You have a proper work contract, and you basically do research there. And at the end of it, compile your results and submit it as a PhD thesis. So I do not have a lot of details because this was a kind of a long time ago for me, and I knew that they have changed a lot of things and there are new rules and regulations. But I can definitely say that if you go on the website of IMPRS, they're very clear about what they want, what kind of application materials they want. And a lot of them are accepting applications right now. So I just saw one yesterday while talking to a mentee. So October to December is typically the time when they are accepting your application materials, and then you will have an interview phase, for which most times they pay the costs of having you fly over to Germany, visit them so that you can also see the facilities, talk to the people in the institute. So in that case, it's like a really good opportunity. Next slide, please. Yeah, so approaching a supervisor. So before you go through or maybe simultaneously you go through the IMPRS route, what I would definitely recommend is contacting people who are working in the different Max Planck Institutes as either group leaders or directors or somebody who's in charge of a research group, and asking them if they have the funding or if they have the opportunity or the space in their group to accommodate you. And these letters, I would recommend being extremely factual and information based. So it's less a personal statement, but really more of a statement of purpose. So mention what your background is, what kind of research experience you have, what kind of skills you have. And I would really recommend researching or putting a lot of work into customizing your every letter to the person you're sending it. So definitely don't have like one standard letter and send it out to everyone. What would really help is if you're writing to someone and if you want to do a particular project with them, you can mention how you can be an asset to their research group. So if you have some particular skills or some experience with some particular equipment that they are also using, and that would be like a good fit, definitely do mention that. So for that, I would really recommend looking up and reading up on what the particular group does and what kind of research they do, what kind of equipment they have, and tailoring your letter according to that, because that is really appreciated in, I mean, everywhere, but Germany in particular. While addressing your supervisor, I mean, this is a very kind of a small tip, but I think it's relevant to Germany. So please make sure that you use the correct salutation. So, I mean, just use their correct title. So either it's professor or doctor, or I think that is very much appreciated and valued in the German ethos. Avoid addressing them as sir or ma'am. I've had a lot of, I mean, when I was there, I used to hear a lot of discussions about how it actually, like, it's not appreciated, or it doesn't fit into their usual style of working. So yeah. And the last thing is that even though, for example, the IMPRS will post official job postings that, okay, this is a PhD opportunity, or we have an official funding for this post, those you should definitely apply for. But if you see someone who's doing something, who's working on something very aligned to your field, and you want to really work with them, do definitely approach them, because it really depends on if they have the funding for your position or not. So it might happen that they do have some extra funds, or they do have the space for a PhD student, and they just haven't officially uploaded on the IMPRS website, which happened with me. So I did not officially apply, but I approached my supervisor and he did have the funding, so I got the position. So that is definitely a good idea. Why Germany? I really think Germany has one of the best funding landscapes, because as a country, it's really one of their principles to invest a lot of money in education and research. It's not a surprise that every year there is at least one Nobel Prize to one of the Max Planck Institutes. So, and you can really see it. So I think for a STEM PhD, one of the things which you really makes your life easier is a good, if your supervisor, if your institute, if you have a good funding situation, because then at least you can focus on the research and you don't have to kind of struggle with the other basics. So I think Germany really is a good option for that. Just like I think Italy, and also what the previous speaker mentioned for Taiwan, it is really focused on research and lab experience. So there's very minimal coursework. Most of it is, and especially then if you're part of the Max Planck Institute, then all your time is gone in research and focused on research, because that is your primary job, sort of. And apart from that, yeah, there are really excellent industry and academia opportunities afterwards. So especially for STEM industry, they really have really good jobs. And right now, looking at the current situation, they are really promoting people to follow this path so that they can have a more skilled workforce. So yeah. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So yeah, these were just some general tips. And the first one is, like, really do your research well before applying, and really try to customize and tailor your application to each individual person or institute you're applying to. That is really, really appreciated everywhere, of course, but Germany definitely, that they really see that, okay, you've put some effort into saying that, okay, we are a good fit for each other as supervisor and PhD student. There are multiple funding opportunities. This is not really, I mean, it's really optional, and it definitely will give you more independence in your PhD. But if you go to one of the Max Planck Institutes, they have enough funding to support you. But apart from that, there's DART, there's DFG, there's the Marie Curie network, etc. One general tip is, do look up the living costs in different German cities, because they do kind of vary a lot depending on which state you're in and what is the size of the city. So if that is a factor for you, definitely do look it up beforehand. And this, I just wanted to give like a general tip for your application process, that have the right approach. It's never personal. It's never that you are not good or you're not good enough. It's mostly, in 99% of the cases, it's that it's just not a right fit for what the supervisor is looking for or what the institute is looking for and your skill set or your this thing. So don't take it personally, and all the best. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachana. Arish, do you want to connect?
Yeah, thanks, Misbah. And thanks, Rachana. I really appreciated that last point that you made, and hopefully other people have also thought about it a bit more, that, you know, it's not personal and there is a lot of rejection in academia, but unfortunately we just need to power through. So thank you for making that point. Okay, so I'm going to quickly talk about applying for PhDs in the UK and the US. I don't have a lot of content here because pretty much everything that other speakers have said so far does also apply to applying to PhDs in the US and the UK. So just as a bit of background, I did my undergrad in the US on a kind of full scholarship situation, and then I applied for PhDs within the US and the UK. I got accepted in both countries, and eventually I ended up doing a PhD in the UK. I'll talk a little bit more about why, but those factors will obviously differ for everyone. So first, for the PhD in the UK, the main kind of consideration is whether you're applying to a project or whether you're applying to a program. So, for example, like Rachana was talking about research-intensive institutions like Max Planck Institute in Germany, there are research-intensive institutions in the UK and the US as well, where you would apply specifically to a project that your supervisor or potential supervisor has already gotten funding to do, but the project is basically designed already because the funding has been granted. So you're applying to do something very, very specific. So that's a project kind of route for applications. The other route is to apply to a program. So each university department might also have its own kind of internal funding or funding from other sources to set up PhD studentships or fellowships. So that is when you're applying to a program or a department where you are not as committed to a specific project or a specific supervisor. Once you get accepted into the department, you might do a little bit of rotations or coursework, and then you can apply, or not apply, but then you can pick a supervisor and pick a project. And you have a bit more flexibility to shape the project to be what you want it to be based on your interests and your supervisor's interests. So the key difference there is essentially that if you're applying to a project, there's less flexibility, but it's much more structured. Whereas if you're applying to a program, there's much more flexibility, but obviously then some people might not enjoy that as much. In terms of the timeline, this is kind of the perfect time to apply both in the US and the UK for next year's September, August intake. So in the US, it would be an August intake. In the UK, it would be a September or October intake. So this is kind of the perfect time for everyone to be thinking about applying. The application process pretty much looks as everyone else has talked about in other countries. You will have kind of online forms or personal statements and things that you need to develop. If you're applying to a specific project, then you might have specific requirements that the supervisor has put out in terms of what they would like to see in the application. Otherwise, if you're applying to a program, the department will obviously put out guidelines on what they want to see in the applications. For a PhD in the UK, you will be required to demonstrate English language proficiency. So that's generally through the IELTS, or you can also take the TOEFL if you want to. But the IELTS is much more acceptable in the UK. If you have a degree from an undergrad degree from a primary English language institution, you might be able to argue that that meets the English language requirements, but it's tricky, especially with visas, because you still need to demonstrate English language requirement when you apply for your visa to come to the UK. Thanks, Misbah. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to talk too much about supervision because everyone else has already covered this, but as in other countries, when you're applying for a PhD in the UK, especially if you're applying to a project, you definitely need to have a chat with the supervisor in advance. But also remember that these people are extremely busy, so you're trying to be as efficient as possible and as respectful of their time and your time. So if you are contacting them, make sure your email is completely to the point. It's not rambling. You're putting a specific question or an ask to them. So if you're applying to a project, for example, you can specifically say, these are my skills. These are how they align to the project. Are you open to having a quick 15-minute chat about XYZ? So very specific, to the point, not wasting anyone's time. And then if you're applying to a program, you're less likely to need to approach a potential supervisor, but it's still a very good idea to look at who is in the department and whose research interests within the department might align with yours. So if you can add that into the application, it will just show that you've done research into the department. It will strengthen your application. And finally, why the UK? The reason I essentially chose to go to my PhD in the UK instead of the US is because A, the programs are shorter. So most of the PhDs here are set up to be somewhere between 3 or 4 years, and they're kind of very time limited because the funding is limited. So there's no open-ended PhD here. And generally the PhDs are well funded. You won't have to necessarily look for external funding yourself once you get into the PhD program or the project. Is generally already funded when you apply for it. Next slide, please, Misbah. Finally, just a few general tips for application in the UK. The application cycle in the UK is also very much research oriented. So make sure that throughout your application and when you're approaching supervisors, you're highlighting your specific research experience. And the question that I would invite you to think about there is, what skills do you already have from, for example, your master's or undergrad research or any work that you've done in any other positions or industry? And what skills do you want to learn? Because remember, the PhD is a training program at the end of the day. So they don't expect you to come in with all the skills that are required for the project. You should be able to demonstrate a good kind of overlap between things that you already know, which are required for the project, and things which are required for the project, but you don't already know and you would like to learn. Thanks, Misbah. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit quickly about PhD in the US. So again, in the US as well, there's research-intensive institutions, for example, Scripps Research Institute in California, Florida, which are specifically research institutions. So you'd apply primarily to do research. But most of the university PhDs in the US are set up to be longer and have a lot more coursework and have a lot more teaching responsibilities beyond just the research that you do. So the overview essentially is just that whereas in the UK, you're primarily doing research, and in other countries in Europe as well, in the US, you might also be teaching and doing lots of other things. If that appeals to you, that's great. It did appeal to me as well, but it does add quite a bit of time to the PhD process. So many PhDs in the US are open-ended, so you can be in there for about 5 years on average, but lots of people are in the program for 6 years, some even more than 6 years. And so there's no kind of fixed guarantee of when you would finish the PhD. It just depends on how you work closely with your supervisor and your thesis committee to determine when you think you're finished. The reason that it's so much longer is essentially because the first 2 years of a PhD in the US are generally coursework. So essentially, you're doing a master's at the very beginning, and then you're proceeding to becoming a doctoral candidate, which is what adds those extra 2 years into the program. Again, in terms of timeline, this is the perfect time for you all to be thinking about applying to these things, because for August intake next year, the deadlines for most programs will be either in December this year or early January next year. So this is where you should be applying for programs by now. Application process is fairly straightforward, as in other countries, so I'm not going to go over that again. The US PhD programs, especially in STEM, are now moving away from requiring subject tests, but some will still require it. So you might need to take the GRE. Some programs might even require you to take a specific GRE subject test, like in, I don't know, mathematics or something like that. I don't even remember what they are anymore. And then some programs will also require you to take English language tests if your undergraduate or master's degree is not from a primarily English language institution. So in the US, people typically take the TOEFL, but you can also take the IELTS. Because I was applying when I went to undergrad, I was also applying both to the US and the UK. I just took the IELTS, and it was accepted in both countries. So it should be fine either way. Next slide, please. And so why USA? The first big thing is master's is not required. So for example, if you are just finished your undergrad, or if you've done your undergrad and are in a job position, and you don't, for example, like me, have money to do a master's program, the US is great because essentially the master's is built into the PhD, and therefore you have funding already essentially to get 2 degrees in one. So you don't need a master's to get into a PhD program in the US. There's wide-ranging funding opportunities in the US. As you all probably know already, the US also spends quite a bit of its GDP on research, and that reflects in the number of funding opportunities that are available. However, not many of those funding opportunities are available to people who are not US citizens or permanent residents. So just keep that in mind. The difference between the UK and the US, because I did mention that the UK has well-funded PhDs. In the US, depending on the department, they might have guaranteed funding for you for X number of years. So some departments might say, okay, we guarantee you funding for 5 years, but if you need more than 5 years to do your PhD, then you're kind of on your own to figure out how you fund that extra year or something like that. Whereas some other programs might actually say, okay, we guarantee you funding for the first 2 years or first year, and then after that, you need to write grants to get an external fellowship through kind of other avenues. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at PhD programs, when you're asking the departments about what support they offer, make sure to ask what level of guaranteed funding they're providing to each student. And make sure to mention that I'm assuming you're not US citizens or permanent residents, because then you're not eligible to apply, for example, for the National Science Foundation PhD fellowships, which a lot of these programs expect you to. So if you can't apply for those and the program is not guaranteeing you funding, then you're kind of stuck in the middle 2 years into your program. So just make sure to keep that in mind. And then finally, the US is a great place if you want to do your PhD and want to get into a teaching focused role, because lots of PhD programs in the US have teaching experience built into them. So you'll be required to teach on undergraduate or graduate courses. And that's great if you want to transition into a teaching focused, like a university lectureship or something like that, because then you'll already have gathered a lot of substantial teaching experience within your PhD, which you generally can't do in the UK. Next, please. Great. And then I think this is my last slide. Just general tips for applications in the US. The first is the same, highlight your research experience. At the end of the day, the PhD is a research training program. So they need to see what skills do you already have and what skills do you need to get. But also in the US, I would say, this is, I mean, obviously an artificial difference, but in the US, I think there's a lot more holistic focus on you as a person. So make sure to provide a story in your application. And by that, I don't mean provide your personal life story or your autobiography. Essentially, what I mean is, why are you interested in researching this particular question that you're proposing? How does that fit with your general skills and your academic trajectory? Make sure to tell a story rather than just kind of giving a list of the research that you've done and what research you want to do in the future. So the last kind of prompt question I have for people to think about there is, and it applies both to the US and the UK, is to think about how you will be an active and productive member of this research community. So by the research community, I mean whatever department or lab that you're applying to, both in the US or the UK. If you can think about that and add a few sentences in your personal statement about that, that will also show that you're thinking about already what you will do and how you will kind of contribute to the community when you are in the PhD program, which might also help strengthen your application. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Arish. And thank you to all the speakers for so comprehensively discussing what the application process looks like in your country or university country. So now we move on to the Q&A part of this workshop. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them to the speakers. Either you can raise your hand and unmute yourselves and ask the question directly, or if you want, you can put the questions in chat and I can read them out to the speakers. So we already have one question. And I received a few in DM, and I can ask those. And in the meantime, if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask the question, you can do that. So one question is asking, I've been attempting to contact professors in Germany regarding potential PhD positions, but most responses indicate a lack of funding and lab space availability. Is there any alternative approach to secure a PhD opportunity in Germany?
Yeah, maybe I can take that. So in that case, I mean, your best and most confirmed bet is to look at the actual job offerings. So I can speak for the Max Planck Institutes. They have a job offerings page because it kind of runs like an employment opportunity. So that is where they post their PhD opportunities, this thing. And apart from that, it's the numbers game. So the more professors you write to, yeah, it can be possible that they don't have funding right now. You can always respond saying, okay, please let me know if some opportunity opens up. But otherwise, the more people you write to, the higher chances are of finding someone who has funding. Yeah.
Great. Does anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question or put it in chat? Otherwise, I can ask the few that came to me. Okay. So there was a question about staying back in the country that you're studying in or doing your PhD in. So maybe if each of you could speak about what happens after you complete your PhD and sort of staying and working in the country that you're in. Anyone wants to go first?
I'll go first. So that was actually one of the reasons that I chose to do my PhD in the UK instead of the US. So in the UK, you can get a 2-year graduate visa once you finish your PhD program, which allows you to basically work kind of unlimited for 2 years. And then after that, the hope is obviously that you can transition to a skilled worker visa or a global talent visa, depending on your level of research excellence, to continue to stay in the UK if you want to. So it's fairly straightforward. And if you have stayed in the UK for 10 years continuously on any different types of visas, then you are basically automatically eligible for permanent residence, as far as I understand. So if your PhD is 3 or 4 years out of that, you've got already 3 or 4 years plus the 2 years of the graduate student visa. So it's relatively straightforward to get to the kind of permanent residence if you want to stay here. In the US, it's literally a lottery, which is why I didn't want to kind of continue to stay there. So you can also get a 2-year kind of work permit after you finish your degree, but after that, you're kind of on your own to try to figure out whether any companies are willing to sponsor a visa for you repeatedly, basically for the rest of your life, unless you get married to someone in the US. So personally, I have a bias, but I think the process is a lot more difficult if you want to continue to stay in the US as opposed to the UK.
Yeah, I can talk about Germany. So the thing is, similar to the UK and US, like Arish mentioned, you get, I think, a year to be not just on a work permit, but like on a work search visa. So it's just literally an extra extension of your visa to look for employment opportunities. And they also have a lot of support in terms of finding jobs, applying to them, and so you do get some kind of support. You also get, if you've been on the PhD or kind of work visa for 4 to 5 years or 3 or 4 years during your PhD, you also get some financial support as well during this work search visa. So it's kind of a really good position.
Maybe I can talk about France and Italy. Okay. Tatheer. Okay.
Yeah, when we talk about Taiwan, it's based on the previous experiences. 99% of the students already get their job in Taiwan. Even if you don't get the job, you will get a 1-year extension in your work visa. In 1 year, even if you were able to get a job, then that's okay. You can stay there as long as you wish to continue. After 5 years doing job in Taiwan, you will get a APRC, Alien Permanent Residence Certificate, on which you can stay for a lifetime in Taiwan, as long as you have the job there. But most of the cases, it's seen that 99% of the times students get a job immediately after completing their degrees there. Thank you.
Zulkarnain.
In France, you can get after you graduated or completed your master's, you can get a we call it job searching visa, VFS visa, sorry, APS visa. So when I was there, it was like 2 years you could stay after your master's, but I think now it has been extended to 4 years for Indian students, but I'm not sure. But I know when I was there, it was 2 years. And similarly, I think in Italy, it's just 1 year after like you complete your studies, you get 1 year time to find some job or some other academic position. And then you can, accordingly, if you get some job, you can apply for that visa or some other like academic visa.
Amazing, thank you. That's one question regarding the MSCA fellowship. What is the application process for the MSCA? The Doctor Network, the application deadline is 29 November.
I've just pasted a link to the
Okay.
website here, which has it outlines everything you need to know about how to apply. So I'm not sure if we can really add anything further to that.
Maybe I can add a little bit. I didn't apply for the doctoral one, but I do have the postdoctoral one. So I'm assuming the basic procedure is kind of the same. The main thing that you need is like an agreement with a host supervisor that they are willing to accept you in their group. And then you write your proposal based on the work that you will do in their research group. So the main requirement is that you have like a written agreement from a person saying, okay, I'm willing to accept this person as a PhD candidate.
There is one more important thing, because I had received this scholarship, but unfortunately due to language requirements, like the project was Eurocentrism, where Spanish were must. So please check if language is required in that particular domain.
Amazing. That's really helpful to know. There's another question on letter of recommendation, whether it should be from a professor who's more generally well known or has an impactful research profile. Would that be more helpful when you're applying for a PhD? Then I'm guessing than someone who's not that well known. Then how would you prioritize getting who to choose as your recommender?
I mean, sorry, go ahead. Okay, from my perspective, I think you need a good mix of, because since you have the options of, definitely they ask for more than one. But even if I think it's more important to showcase that whoever you're taking a letter of recommendation from knows you better and can vouch for your skills better than just how famous they are. So I think that really more importance should be, at least this is my opinion, that more importance should be given to, okay, does your letter demonstrate that this person can really vouch for your skills, has seen you work, etc. And at least one of your letters should be that one where the person is saying, okay, I really have seen this person work, and etc. Yeah.
Zulkarnain.
I think Rachana has already said what.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, the person should know you. You should have worked with him. It doesn't matter how is like, he should not be like, reputation doesn't matter there, but you should have worked with a person. He should know you very well so that he can like say recommend you to some other PhD position.
Can I just add something quickly to that? I would also suggest, when you're looking at your different application materials, look at it like a kind of a puzzle where each piece should provide a different picture of who you are as a researcher. So when I request letters of recommendation for anything, I make sure to tell people, okay, for this person, I want them to speak to this specific aspect of my research, and another person speaks to a different one, because it's not really useful if you've got 3 different letters of recommendation, but they're kind of saying the same thing. You want them to be supplementary to each other and provide different windows into your research skills and your experiences. So if you ask one person you can always suggest when you ask, for a letter of recommendation, I'm hoping that you can talk to my ability to build collaborations outside of the field, for example, or I'm hoping you can talk to my the 6 months that I spent in your lab, and specifically my writing skills and things like that. So make sure to tell people that in order to get a full picture of yourself through the letter of recommendation as well.
Yeah, that's a really good tip.
I will add one more thing. In India, most of the professors do not use their official email addresses. So ask them to submit the recommendation letters using their official email IDs. That's highly important.
Sure. That. So there's another question on coursework. If someone is asking what is coursework, and I guess maybe relatedly, you can also speak on what the sort of coursework is for what it was like for each of your PhD programs.
I will speak first. In Taiwan, the coursework is mostly a kind of requirement for your degree certificate, nothing more than that. But you need to pass that even no matter what. But usually the professors who is your supervisor, they don't care about that, what you are doing and how you are doing that. They only care about your research work. The subject is just for the sake of degree requirements. That's it.
Okay, I can go next. So based on my experience in Germany, it is really not a focal point, or it has very little importance in your PhD program. So the way most universities work towards the PhD is that you have to kind of accumulate a certain number of credit points to graduate. But the way you collect those credit points is completely flexible and up to you. So for example, you get points if you present at a conference, you get points if you have a publication, you get points if you have like a host a seminar, etc., etc. And one way to collect those points is to do the coursework, so to attend the lectures and actually like give the exam and finish it. So if you want to, and if your supervisor thinks that okay, you maybe need to brush up on some theoretical skills in this particular area, it's an opportunity to do it, but you really don't have to. So if you think okay, I really don't need to sit through these courses, because most of the courses which are available to you as a PhD student are the same ones which are like a general postgraduate level. So early masters, first year masters. So if you already have a master's degree, it is really not required. And then you can circumvent this stuff. The need for taking lectures by collecting the points other ways.
In Italy, also coursework is not that important. I mean, you have to cover like certain credits, and you are flexible. You can choose courses from whatever topic you want. So main focus is mostly on like your research.
Yeah, so same in the UK, the coursework, you pretty much won't do any because most people come into the PhD with a master's already, whereas in the US, most people come in without a master's, so you'll have 2 years of coursework, as I already mentioned, which will be kind of determined by the department to essentially to make sure that everyone's starting their actual PhD project with kind of a similar baseline level of knowledge in the field, because people might come from different kinds of educational backgrounds. And so you'll have to do maybe 2 years of coursework while you develop your PhD project and while you're developing kind of teaching skills and things like that. And then those same courses are the ones that you're likely to be teaching on when you move into your PhD project.
Okay, amazing. I think there's another question on the MSCA fellowship. They're asking, is it okay to join in on a joint doctoral PhD, which is funded by the MSCA? In a joint PhD, for example, 2 years in one university, which is in Germany, and another 1 year in another university. Is it good to join an individual program, doctoral program, or a joint PhD program? If anyone has sort of tips on the pros and cons of joining a joint PhD program, if anyone can speak to that.
I can add something. So I think the answer is it really depends on what your project is and what you're looking for. So the main advantage of a joint doctoral program can be that you get exposed or experience in different kind of skill sets and different labs. So especially if your topic is heavily interdisciplinary or needs kind of collaborations from very specific kind of equipment or expertise, then that's a really good option where you spend some time in one place and kind of substantiate that experience with a different lab and a different skill set. So in that case, that's really useful. I know for the MSCA though, while writing the proposal, you will have to really explain why you want to go for this program. So in terms of your research proposal, you really need to show, okay, this is the project I want to do, and I need experience in this area and also this other area, and that's why these two people offer that, and that's why I want to go for the joint one. If that's really not required, if your project does not require that kind of extensive equipment or research facilities, then a single one is also fine. So it really depends on what your project is.
Amazing. Okay, there was one question that came to me, which was about applying as an undergrad student. So in some universities, you can apply even without a master's, and I think Arish had also spoken to that. But what is the expectation of research experience in that case?
So I can talk about that a little bit. I didn't do a master's before I went into my PhD, so that's basically my situation as well. I don't feel like the master's was necessary. I went from a 4-year undergraduate degree to a PhD, so it's not like in the UK where if you're in England, for example, you will do a 3-year undergraduate plus a 1 or 2 year master's, which basically makes up that 4-year US undergrad degree. But in order to get into a PhD program, you need to demonstrate strong research skills and research experiences already. So I had, lots of different types of research experiences in different labs, but also it wasn't just like taking up a project that someone else gave me. You need to be able to demonstrate that you have independence of thought, that you're thinking about the research questions that you're exploring, not just kind of following someone else's recipe or instruction to do something in the lab, but actually developing your own ideas and thinking about it. So if you can do that, and if you can demonstrate that you've done at least a few months of research, or well, ideally more, then you shouldn't need to have a master's. So even in the UK, you could potentially apply. Some degrees will have an explicit requirement that you need to have a master's to apply, but many don't if you are able to demonstrate sufficient research experience.
Amazing. I think we've answered all questions in chat. Does anyone have any more questions to ask?
Actually, I have a question for Arish. So Arish, you said like you can directly apply to PhD position, but there are a lot of degrees that are like 3 years. Mostly in India, I have done like 3-year bachelor's degree. So is it applicable to that also, or you need to have a 4-year degree?
No, you don't need to have a 4-year degree. You can apply with a 3-year undergraduate degree as well, as long as you have other research experience. So I think the reason I say that is because a 3-year undergraduate degree may not be enough time to gather sufficient research experience, which is the only real factor. But if you are, for example, if you have a research position after your 3-year undergraduate degree, you don't necessarily need a master's to apply to the PhD.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. There are a lot of like students in India. I think they still don't know this thing. Like I know a lot of people who like are thinking that they should do 4-year degree to get an admission directly in PhD in US. So, thank you.
Yep, no, that's fine. I think it's more about demonstrating your research experience and less about the kind of qualifications or number of years of education that you have. Personally, I didn't have the money to do a master's, so that was never going to be an option for me anyway. But having demonstrated other types of research experience, it just makes up for it, because actually the point of a master's, for example, is also to just give you additional research training, which you can also get in a research position.
That's amazing. Okay, I think that's all of the questions, and we've been going on for a while, so we can stop now. Thank you so much to Tatheer, Rachana, Arish, and Zulkarnain for joining us today and for speaking to everyone about this whole application process. I'm sure it helped a lot of people, and for those who will be watching the recording as well. And And yeah, if you will find the recording of this workshop on our YouTube channel, along with the draft PPT that was used in the session today. And yeah, I think that's about it. I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much once again, Zulkarnain, Tatheer, Arish, and Rachana.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
hosting, Misbah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.